When Cyberpunk Edgerunners kicked off on Netflix, it was spectacularly well received, and rightly so. It was a damn good anime. When Cyberpunk Edgerunners kicked off on Netflix, it also gave the video game it was inspired by a huge spank. Player numbers on Steam alone leapt from about 30,000 peak players out there every single day up to 250 to 270,000 peak concurrent a day. That's pretty significant. And I've been wondering for some time now if we'll see a similar phenomenon with Fallout games once the Amazon-produced live-action Fallout series show launches. A launch now just a couple of weeks away. I've pondered this in videos about the bizarre silence around the Fallout 4 Next Gen update we're all assuming would drop alongside the show to capitalize on this phenomenon, but now seems increasingly unlikely to surface. Bizarre. I've pondered if Fallout 76 is worth coming back to off the back of the TV show for new players and returning players who maybe abandoned it back in the day. I've tested the current state of Fallout 4 on the current gen consoles and how the backwards compatibility modes work with the last gen game, just in case that next gen update does indeed fail to arrive with the show. This is the version of the game people are going to be coming to. Spoiler alert, it's garbage, by the way. It's not good. Today, though, my curiosity moves over to seeing how Fallout 76 runs on the ROG Ally here, one of now several similarly spec'd handheld PC gaming devices around in the world, a category of device that really didn't exist in any practical way when Fallout 76 launched. I'd expected it to be fine. When I was still testing the ROG Ally before its launch on my pre-release review sample, I tried Fallout 4. In the context of Fallout being a problem game for the Steam Deck, one of the competitors for the ROG Ally, to see if the ROG Ally could provide any significant better experience. The short version of that one is, yes it did. And while Fallout 76 here shares the same engine, more or less, and quite a lot of the same assets, being as it is a spin-off of what was once imagined, once upon a time, as a multiplayer DLC for Fallout 4 itself. They share a lot of DNA. But back when I tested Fallout 4 on the Ally, I never bothered with 76. I was still under the, as it turns out, mistaken impression that Fallout 76 was a dead game with nothing to offer. I was wrong about that, but was I wrong with my assumption that it's broadly similar to Fallout 4 when it comes to performance on devices like the Ally? Well, Fallout 76 has slightly different settings options, as they're all in-game now instead of via Bethesda's janky old Creation Engine launcher, which was clunky, old-fashioned garbage even when Fallout 4 was brand new. So I simply started by letting the game auto-detect what it thought would work on the Ally, and that was a 1080p setting, medium textures, low water quality, low lighting quality, medium shadows quality, and low shadow distance, and all of the object fade sliders at minimum. Fun fact, by the way, I was recording some of this footage for this video this morning when the servers were down. Did you know that if the servers are down for Fallout 76, you can't actually even get to the main menu of Fallout 76 in order to quit the game? It keeps telling you the servers are down, but then once you get to a menu to quit, you actually have to hard quit. You have to Alt F4 your way out of the game. You have to give it a hard shutdown just to escape the game when it tells you the servers are down, you can't play. Bethesda, please change. Anyway, turns out those default settings are just kind of fine, as you've been seeing here as I've been waffling. I mean, I don't want to play like this. I don't want to play like this, but it works okay. It's fine. I was testing in the default power mode of 15 watts. You can, of course, use the full 30-watt power mode and get noticeably better performance, but the use case here, as I figured, is, playing this game on the ROG Ally means you're much more likely to be playing long sessions because that's just the kind of game it is. So that's why I started at the 15-watt mode. Much more comfortable to play this way, cooler, quieter, way more efficient, better on the battery, all that kind of stuff. But there's another option we'll come to in a little bit. So what you get with this arrangement, again, as you've been seeing no doubt, is a 30 to 40 FPS experience, most often closer to 30 FPS, especially in the busier locations on the map, like Charleston here, while you'll also see it dip below 30 FPS from time to time. Not for long and not all that often, but reasonably regularly. A very console-like experience, really, we can call it that. And while depending on your play style and build, 30 FPS might be okay for some people with this game. It's not okay for me. Not in this game, not how I play, and not in first or third person view. So we fiddle. First step was to pop to the relatively new default graphics option that was added to the Ally's graphics drivers as a native option a little while back, and that's 900p. This was officially added after the community figured out this was a really nice sweet spot for a lot of more demanding games for the Ally, including Fallout 76 here as it turns out. Now, With otherwise identical settings, we're much more happily in the mid-40s more often than not, significantly more comfortable place for your own personal tastes. User reminder here, by the way, the captured video you're looking at might allow you to see some screen tearing. This does not exist on the Ally, because the Ally's screen is a FreeSync premium device which entirely nukes all of the screen tearing. So if you've left a comment complaining about that, now's the time to edit that comment. it's not an issue. Now, at these settings, the lowest dip size saw was about 35 FPS for very brief moments, and it could spike up to 70 FPS in the, easy places. This is the sweet spot for the game on the Ally, in my opinion, especially if, like me, the Ally is a secondary gaming device used for convenience and comfort away from the main gaming rig. You can take care of your dailies while curled up on the couch or out the back porch or whatever, run some events, go pottering around, fiddle with your camp, all easy peasy, no worries. But much like 900p was officially added as an option in the drivers after the community took matters into their own hands and figured it all out, so too was an official 18-watt power profile after the community did their experimentations to figure out it was a really nice sweet spot. And indeed it too does serve as a sweet spot of compromise for the Ally, like 900p is nicer than 720p but more efficient than 1080p with relatively minimal visual sacrifice. The 18-watt power mode is noticeably better than the 15-watt power mode without all the extra heat and fan noise of 30 watts. And here is where you want to be playing if you're able to be hooked up to USB power while you play. So, more like your couch rather than the back porch, I suppose. You're getting an extra 10 to 15 FPS on average over the 15-watt mode, and while it doesn't look much different, it feels noticeably smoother. Much more pleasant. And of course it gives you more padding, more overhead for when things get intense, for those little moments in-game where things do get rather more intense. Lastly, the final useful configuration I tested was, of course, 720p. I kept the 18-watt power mode, but I popped up the settings a little bit. Figuring that 18-watt at 900p was already fine, I thought using the extra overhead that 720p will give us to turn up the graphic settings was the most sensible path. Now, 720p probably looks a bit soft if you're watching this video on a desktop screen or TV or even a laptop, but as I've often said, the Ally's 7-inch 1080p screen hides a lot of 720p's crimes, and it actually is pretty tolerable through human eyes on that screen. Sure, it does look softer than 900p and 1080p, of course, but not as soft as you might imagine if you've never experienced it firsthand. That said, I'd still recommend 900p for a little extra crispy, because it is noticeable, but it's worth swapping down to 720p with higher graphic settings to see how you feel about it personally, because at this point, things get a little more subjective. So, there you are, a few simple tests and a little bit of advice. Hopefully you found this useful. I am Blunty, thank you as always to the patrons scrolling up above there, and I will catch you next time.